안녕하세요. 매일매일 운동하기를 실천하고 있는 동탄왕보입니다. 지금 너무 피곤해요. 사실대로 말하겠습니다. 너무 피곤해요. 이틀 쉬고 야간하고 또 퇴근해서 와서 지금 너무 피곤합니다. 졸려요. 비몽사몽이네, 비몽사몽. 근데 일단은 스트레칭을 했어요. 30분에서 40분 정도 스트레칭 했습니다. 와, 진짜 스트레칭만 해도 땀이 나요, 여러분. 스트레칭에 효과입니다. 이게 진짜 집에서 스트레칭도 안 하시는 분들이 한둘이 아니죠. 스트레칭 꼭 하세요. 스트레칭. 운동 안 하실 거면은 스트레칭이라도 하셔야 됩니다, 여러분. 그리고 지금 시간이 아직 10시가 안 됐어요. 9시 반쯤 됐는데, 와, 오늘도 주식 삼성전자 엄청 오르고 있죠. 그리고 현대차, 와, 현대차 주주분들 축하드립니다. 뭐 애플이랑 뭐 한다고 해가지고 오르는 거죠, 지금. 부럽네요, 여러분. 역시 우량주로 그냥 다만 넣는 게 최고인 것 같아요. 그쵸? 일단 오늘도 제 몸은 너무 피곤합니다. 피곤한데 일단은 스쿼트랑 할게요. 스쿼트랑 스쿼트랑 뭐하지? 일단 스쿼트 20개씩 5세트 하고 나서 그 다음 운동을 생각해 보겠습니다.
Today we make 750,000 bottles of salt. And Edmund, during his entire career as a pepper sauce manufacturer, and that was a 22-year period, he made about 350,000 bottles. So we make twice as much in a single day as he made during his entire career.
And today, the Tabasco label is produced in 25 languages and exported to 195 countries around the world.
As the sun sets in Seoul and Shanghai, deals are signed in Dubai, and Europe is already in play. New York prepares to make its first move. I'm Julia Chastity, host of CNN's newest business show, First Move. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers. Bold moves, big deals, winning trades. It's all right here. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley tonight.
I'm Matt Rivers in Mexico City, and this is CNN.
We're going to have much more on all the breaking news in just a few moments. House Democrats moving forward with impeachment of President Trump. But right now, we want to discuss the pandemic and a new horrific number this evening. The United States now reporting more than 100,000 daily COVID-19 hospitalizations for the 40th day in a row. Already today, and the day is not over yet, we've seen over 129,000 hospitalizations across the U.S. Meanwhile, the CDC says just 6.7 million first doses of the vaccine have been given. 20 million we were promised by the end of 2020. Joe Biden wants to try a different approach. Instead of holding supply back to ensure second doses, he wants to release all supply for first shots as quickly as possible. Dr. Paul Offit, who's on the FDA Vaccine Advisory Committee, says that potentially could be risky.
I think what the Biden plan is doing is they're making a big bet, and I think an unnecessary bet. They're assuming that they're going to be able to mass produce, mass distribute, and mass administer that second dose in a timely manner.
Dr. Celine Gonder is a member of the Biden-Harris Transition COVID Advisory Board, and Dr. Ashish Jha is the Dean of the Brown University School of Public
아니,
Health.
너무
And
싫어요.
doctors, thanks so much for joining us. So Dr. Gonder, what is going on right now? Take us a little bit behind the scenes, if you can, to make this new concept, this new plan that's being put forward by the Biden folks work.
Well, if I want to be very clear that this is a supply chain management decision, this is not a change in a recommendation for how the vaccine should be dosed or administered. And so the Pfizer vaccine should still be given at full dose, the second dose at 21 days, and the Moderna vaccine should still be given at full dose, the second dose at 28 days. What we realized is that, in essence, we were getting in our own way. We were making the distribution more complicated than it had to be. So, for example, if I got a vaccination today and I needed a second vaccination in 3 weeks, you would have to have that vaccination with my name on it in the freezer waiting for me for 3 weeks later. And that's just unnecessarily complicated when we're already dealing with such logistical challenges.
That's a good point. You know, Dr. Jha, the former FDA director, Dr. Scott Gottlieb, says the Trump plan, if there is a Trump plan, what's going on right now clearly is not working. We need to hit the reset button. I assume you agree.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. Yeah, we're a month since the Pfizer vaccine was authorized, and about 3 weeks since the Moderna vaccine was authorized. The fact that we're about 7 million Americans vaccinated is a travesty. I completely agree with Dr. Gottlieb, and I also agree here quite vocally with Dr. Gounder and the Biden plan. I don't think it's necessary to hold every dose back. I've been one of the few people who've sort of said we could even stretch out the second dose, but I understand a lot of people are not comfortable with that. I think it's fine to go ahead and obviously, to get people that second dose on time, but we don't have to hold 55% of the doses in reserve. Getting doses out there is going to make a big difference.
And one of the problems, Dr. Gonder, in 10 days, Biden becomes president of the United States. One of the problems is the distribution of these vaccines. Maybe 25 or 30 million have been distributed, but only 6 million or so have been administered, putting shots in people's arms. My sense, and I keep saying this, nobody's listening to me, but my sense is you need a massive mobilization. FEMA has to be mobilized. The military has to be mobilized. Stadiums, churches, auditoriums. People have to get these vaccines ASAP. What? Thousands and thousands of Americans are dying every single day. We need these folks vaccines. Does the Biden team have a concept to go and accelerate the distribution of these shots?
Well, trust me, we're listening to you and many like you who are suggesting these out-of-the-box creative solutions. And we certainly will be pursuing some of these after January 20th. I do think big picture, we need to be providing a massive infusion of funding to local and state health departments. They have been suffering from chronic underfunding and then further budget cuts since the 2008-2009 recession. We have lost 50,000 public health workers since that time. And so we really need to be rebuilding the public health workforce to administer these vaccinations, even as we might be drawing on some of these other sources of staffing that you suggest. But this needs to be done very urgently, and Congress needs to cooperate to get that done.
Yeah, if there's a tornado, if there's a hurricane, floods, FEMA's activated, the military's activated, people get into action. I don't see that happening right now in the enormous need that is out there. Dr. Jha, let me get your thoughts on this, because there's also some word that the Biden team may be rethinking the prioritization guidance, that who should be getting these vaccines right now, who should move up the list. What do you think?
Yeah, I haven't heard the details of what the Biden team is thinking, but look, we've got to get these vaccines out. Right now, if we don't get moving, a lot of older people, a lot of high-risk people, people with comorbidities may be months away from getting the vaccine. My sense is that President-elect Biden and his whole team is looking at all of it and trying to think about how do we get vaccines out quickly, efficiently, and get it out to people who are at high risk so we can begin to save lives. I think we should always be reviewing these things, and I think that would be a wise thing to do at this moment.
Very quickly, Dr. Gonder, what do you think?
I agree with Dr. Jha, and we are reevaluating, we are debating actively amongst ourselves, how can we simplify and how can we get vaccines out to the American people faster?
Well, it's a critically important issue because the cases, hospitalizations, and deaths here in the United States are exploding right now. We need to get these shots. We need to do it right away. Dr. Gounder, thanks for everything you're doing. Dr. Jha, we really appreciate everything you're doing as well. To both of you, thank you so much. Meanwhile, as calls are growing louder and louder for President Trump to step aside, even though he only has 10 days left in the White House, the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is preparing to pass a resolution on the House floor tomorrow that would call on Vice President Pence and the Trump cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment to the Constitution. We have details on what that means. We'll be right back.
We're in the midst of a very tragic situation for most people. Never mind the tragedy of loss of life, but also the tragedy of sickness and the economic privations that have affected so many people. So we have to put this in context before we talk about how well we're doing. Yes, we are doing well in this context because people are at home with time on their hands and they're consuming more entertainment. It does seem that there's a systemic shift from linear entertainment to interactive entertainment as people realize what we have to offer, which is, in addition to a visual experience and a gameplay experience, we offer a social experience. You can actually talk with your friends around the world and create new friends while you play our game and have our experiences. And I think people are realizing that's really extraordinary, and particularly extraordinary when you're stuck at home.
Let's get after it.
Cases are still going up. This virus has enormous capabilities.
The government's quiet on too much.
Black lives do matter.
Too many people are getting the infection. We'll find out Tuesday through Saturday on CNN.
This is a mask. It prevents the spread of coronavirus. This is not a political statement. It's a mask.
In the city of London, and this is CNN.
Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
Coronavirus is affecting the entire country.
the world. Are we ready?
In the beginning of outbreaks like this, nobody knows what's happening. We're determined to keep reporting the story. Because we're ready for it. These are the moments where our humanity really does shine through. That's the hardest part.
It's heart-wrenching.
Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN.
This is CNN.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Welcome to our viewers here in the United States and around the world. I'm Will Flitzer in Washington. This is a special edition of the Situation Room. And we begin tonight with breaking news out of Capitol Hill. House Democrats just announced they will introduce a resolution calling on Vice President Mike Pence and the Trump cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, removing President Trump from office. The House is giving Pence 24 hours to respond, and then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says they would move immediately toward the impeachment proceedings. President Trump has only 10 days left in office. Speaker Pelosi spoke earlier tonight to CBS News about why impeachment is still so critical.
What if he pardons himself?
What if he pardons these people who are terrorists on the Capitol?
Or pardons
He does
himself?
that. He can only pardon himself from federal offenses. He cannot pardon himself from state offenses, and that's where he's being investigated in the state of New York.
There is a possibility that after all of this, there's no punishment, no consequence, and he could run again for president.
And that's one of the motivations that people have for advocating for impeachment.
Won't that take more than the 10 days? I mean, does it actually make sense?
Well, I like the 25th Amendment because it gets rid of him. He's out of office. But there is strong support in the Congress for impeaching the president a second time.
All right, let's bring in CNN's Ryan Nobles. He's following all the breaking news for us. He's up on Capitol Hill for us. Also joining us, CNN's Jeremy Diamond, who's over at the White House. Ryan, this new development, the statement from the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi that she will formally call on the Vice President and the Trump cabinet to use the 25th Amendment, the power in that amendment to remove the president from office during these final 10 days. It's a process that starts moving tomorrow morning. Update us on this timeline.
Yeah, that's right, Wolf. This is the first time that Speaker Pelosi has made it clear that her caucus and her fellow Democrats in the House of Representatives are ready to move forward with impeachment proceedings. We're still not exactly sure when that process will begin in earnest. We know that it begins at least in part tomorrow morning on the House floor, where she'll ask for unanimous consent to essentially put Vice President Mike Pence on notice and tell him that he has 24 hours to tell them whether or not he plans to take the step of using the 25th Amendment to remove President Trump from office. Now, if Pence doesn't respond, or if he says that he's not going to take that route, then the House will begin the process of impeaching the president. Now, the wrinkle that we're not exactly clear on yet, and we're told that the Speaker's office is intentionally being vague on, is exactly when all this process could take place. It's very unlikely that they'll be able to push through this resolution through unanimous consent, because only one Republican would have to object to it, and therefore they would then need an up or down vote on the House floor. So it could begin Tuesday, could begin Wednesday, but it is pretty clear that it will start at some point this week. Of course, the big question here is exactly where Vice President Mike Pence stands on all of this. He has yet to say specifically where he stands. And then the other question, Wolf, is